How am I doing? I'm doing great. How are you? Great. What do you mean, who the fuck am I? Okay, so I just saw The Shape of Water, Del Toro's new movie, and it was good. It's emotional, it's romantic, it's all things I like. But it left me with this question. Is Guillermo del Toro actually a good director? You see, for me, I'd kind of bundle him in with the visionaries, people who always leave a strong stylistic imprint on their movies, but really are the kind of directors that are only as good as their screenplays. Del Toro's made a lot of good movies, but he's also made some pretty boring ones, arguably. So when you look at The Shape of Water, which does work as a film, it works very well, how much of that is the director and how much of that is the happenstance of elements coming together and working well? I'd argue it's mostly the latter. See, the screenplay for Shape of Water is exactly the sort of screenplay that in some other company's hands you can imagine would be a complete pile of shit. It's saccharine, it's predictable, it's melodramatic. But when I say in another company's hands, I don't mean a director. I'm talking about the cast, the crew, the art direction, of course, which Del Toro is a part of. But then when you bring him and the cast and crew together, what you get in The Shape of Water is something like the kind of movie Tim Burton would have made if Tim Burton was a really good director. But then again, if Tim Burton had the cast, the crew, the screenplay that this movie does, maybe he would have made just as good a movie. So you're beginning to get a sense of my kind of general lack of confidence in Del Toro. He's an extremely good visualist, but is he someone that really knows how to tell a story? I mean, he's not Spielberg. Not that Spielberg also doesn't have his flaws. He's extremely facile. Spielberg tries to be a philosopher when really he's just a storyteller. That's his downfall. Perhaps by the same token, you could say that Del Toro wants to be a storyteller, but really his great gift is visual style. So then there's the Oscars issue. Should The Shape of Water have been nominated for Best Film? Well, I think it's a fair nomination because everyone involved gives their very best. And if you're going to call a movie Best Movie, that's probably the criteria you have to look at, whether or not everyone involved was performing at the top of their craft. And in this case, I think they were. What else did I see? Lego Batman. Lego Batman, right? Now, that was awesome. That was pretty good. And it made me think about how that representation of Batman is just works so much better than the kind of representation that's directed at young adults, teens upwards, right? And I was trying to figure out why that's the case. And I think it's because Batman just isn't that complicated, right? To put this into perspective, let's think about Watchmen for a second. The whole kind of unique selling point of Alan Moore's Watchmen is that it's a reflection of DC superhero tropes. It's the selling point is what would these people be like if they lived in real life? And each of the characters in Watchmen has their kind of parallel in Marvel and DC. When you think about which character in Watchmen is supposed to reflect Batman, there's no prizes for guessing which that is. It's Rorschach, of course. Rorschach is what Batman would be like in real life if Batman were a real person. And of course, he's absolutely out of control. So now if you try to make Batman more realistic, you're inevitably going to have to drift further and further towards the Rorschach type characterization. And the reason for that is because Bruce Wayne / Batman couldn't function in the real world. There's absolutely no way, if you've devoted your whole life to carrying out a vendetta against all criminal enterprises, there's absolutely no way you could be that person and also successfully manage an international multi-billion-dollar company. Well, when I've criticized Batman on this issue, some people have said to me, well, you know, it's possible. Some people could be Richard Branson and at the same time be Bruce Lee by night. Yeah, I'm sure they could. But Very, very few people could. So the problem with that is that if you present us with a mythological figure that represents the kind of traits that only very few people could have or wish to have, then you're not presenting the audience with something that's universal. And that's a big problem. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the myth, you can't have the Batman, and at the same time focus your character on possibilities that are fringe. It doesn't work that way. Myths don't work that way. So-called adult Batman is hobbled from the outset because psychologically it's unrealistic. And we see this, it's writ large, particularly in the scene in The Dark Knight, where Batman interrogates the Joker. And it's supposed to be this really serious scene where Batman beats the crap out of his nemesis. And everything about the production and everything about the editing frames it as something that we should take really seriously, because by gosh, Batman is willing to go to such terrible lengths. He's willing to compromise his moral integrity in order to get the information out of the bad guy. And it would work in some other movie, but it doesn't work here because Batman looks like a stupid toy, which highlights the fact that he never really had any convincing kind of psychological trope in the first place. It's a children's movie disguised as an adult movie. Lego Batman is an adult's movie disguised as a children's movie. It's a movie that has actual themes, complex themes, but that are delivered simplistically and palatably. And that's exactly the kind of format that Batman needs. Or else revise him. Revise him completely. Because I understand that what I'm saying is controversial, but I've got nothing against the idea of a super serious Batman movie. Nothing against it at all. It's just that it hasn't really been done yet. If you want to make a good Batman movie, you either go with what you've got, and that is basically Lego Batman. Or, if you want to do a properly serious Batman movie, you're going to have to reinvent him altogether and present something to the audience that's more universal. I think Darren Aronofsky once had a finger in the pie somewhere. He was developing So Darren Aronofsky was developing a Batman screenplay, which at one point looked to be greenlit. He was also apparently working on Wolverine. Now, I get the impression that Logan, the movie that they eventually arrived at, was probably a bit of Aronofsky's pitch mixed in with other stuff. I think that if you liked that movie and you're into Batman, then you probably would have liked the movie that Aronofsky came up with. As far as I can tell, his idea, and I think it's the best one, is that there is no Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, as a tender child, sees his parents killed before him and spends the rest of his life cultivating his body and his intellect for one purpose, and that is to fight crime aggressively. And there's no way that person is going to also manage to be Bruce Wayne. If you don't want Rorschach, then you don't want Batman, as he really would be. So, Okay, well, look, once again, thank you very much for indulging me. I know that this is going to be controversial. There's a lot of people that like The Dark Knight, and I don't want to piss them off. Please do look in the low bar for a link to Rebel Moon, which is the Facebook arm of Heatwave UK. And thank you so much to my this fucking much, right? Look, thank you to all my subscribers. And thank you so much to everyone that's viewed the videos. I really appreciate it. I don't... Listen, I really don't deserve this much attention. So any attention I get... Any attention? Any attention I get... I really don't deserve this much attention. So any attention I get is a bonus. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for indulging me. See you next time. Bye.